behavior. If people are on time, get going. If people are late, they should be punished, not you sitting around waiting. So we are recording. That's okay, just to show people who can't make it. Good afternoon. It's nearly Christmas. Oh, nice backdrop, Sarah.
Oh, God. I was trying to get it, so I went stick.
It feels like it's still far away, but it's coming up. Everyone's knackered. Are you all knackered? Just me. I did do a post last week and you will never get everything finished, so forget the idea, and it will still be there when you come back. And the difference between the last day at work and the first day back is a day, because everybody's off. So don't panic, it's just a day. Don't go into Christmas feeling utterly exhausted. Good afternoon, Em. So we are here to talk about strategic change versus system resistance. Hello, Naomi, good to see you. I'm going to share my screen. These are just prompt slides rather than death by PowerPoint, so don't panic. Little bit about me. Well, sure, we'll all meet each other on this call. I don't do that. Everyone introducing yourself, because it just gets tedious and nobody really listens. We'll get to know each other through the call, hoping for interaction, videos on, all of that good stuff. Little bit about me, author of the Change Ninja book series. First one is work-based, and it's a choose your own adventure book. The second one is personal-based, because change is really, really hard when it's about you and the emotions are kicking in and the impacts and going to have a real impact on you. Both based on real life stories and both quite fun, hopefully, and gamified, so it helps you to learn as you go. If you're interested in anything else, just give us a shout after. There's lots to go with those two books. And I always start with, if you've been to session, hopes and fears. Good morning, Christina. I'm saying good morning because Christina is always here and she's in New Zealand, and it's probably, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning or something. But let's start with hopes and fears. Why are you here? What is your greatest hope for the next 30 minutes? And what do you not want me to do? So just shout out when you're ready, and that way we can have a really good session for you. Anything?
I'm just hoping to be inspired, Tammy, and just
brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No fears, just hopes.
No fears. What I like to hear. Anyone else?
Yeah, probably the same, really. Just looking for some inspiration. I think it's always nice to get different ideas and perspectives from different people. So I'm hoping to come away feeling a bit unstuck.
Unstuck. Love it. That's a ninja term. Anyone else? Why are you here? You're giving me 40 minutes of your time. Relatable discussion. Relatable. Brilliant. Thank you, Naomi. No, not everyone can have the mics on if you're in the office. Everyone comfortable with roleplay? I say this every week because I find it funny. It's probably not if you've heard it 18 times. Nobody says it, and then when I suggest it, they get scared. I'm not going to roleplay. I have a hope that we do interact and just shout out as we go, and if you can, have your mics on or use chat function. So we have no fears. We want to be inspired, unstuck, find it relatable, and have some impact with what we do. Always start with the hopes and fears at any session, any meeting. I will reiterate this every time you come to a session, because it's the best brain-friendly way to get people listening. If you send out an agenda and people don't resonate with the agenda, they're not going to listen. If you don't deal with the fears and they've got something they're going to worry about, they're not listening because they're thinking about the thing they're worried about. If you introduce this, start with your team, start with a friendly bunch, get them to do it. They probably won't have any fears to start with. They might be a bit reluctant. So have some fears ready for yourself. My fear is that you won't engage and interact and all of that good stuff. Once they know you're showing a little bit of vulnerability about your worries, they're much more likely to say them. Then get rid of the fears. Because once the fears are gone, you've got that aligned group and people are going to be engaged in what you're here to do. So if you learn nothing today, honestly try this. It absolutely works. They will come up with things that you thought of already. So then there's unlikely to be any big surprises. So as I've prepared today's presentation, nobody said anything. I think, oh, I haven't actually got that in my presentation, because I did pre-think what you might say. So it's really much, much better than doing a pre-formed agenda. Good afternoon, Matt. Good to see you here. So today's session. I did a poll recently on organisational strategy, and the answers that was what does your organisational strategy do for you? Does it make you think, wow, I want to work here? Blah, 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 blah. Heard it all before, or it's the same as last time, they've just changed the dates. What are your responses if you've got an organisational strategy, or the last strategy you saw? What would your response be to that poll? You can shout it or type it in. I'm just curious.
I would have, so definitely it was the organisational strategy that made me want to work where I was working. But I think having been there a while, I probably feel a bit more like blah, blah, blah.
That's great that they managed to get you inspired by the strategy. That's a first. I've not heard that before. Anyone else?
We did have a strategy when it was launched a couple of years ago. It did inspire me, and now they have just changed the date. So it's yeah, a bit of a combination. Yeah,
super. I remember doing a strategy for blood transfusion, and I left the organisation, and then I was back for something about 8 years later. The poster was still on the wall. And it was very similar to the one previous. We just made it look different. So the poll results that I got from LinkedIn, nobody really said this is a strategy that makes me want to work here. Oh, you've got a small one. So you're involved. If you're involved in it, then you might, in the production of it. And that's the thing. It's not that the strategy is wrong. It's that the people working on it haven't conveyed what the strategy means to a level that people are going to engage with it. So a lot of people have sat in a room, and you might be one of these people if you're in a small organisation. There might have been some consultation. That's what we're going to do. And all of the good stuff happens in the conversation. And then somebody translates it onto paper, and it means very, very little. So the story, the essence of the strategy is often lost. Just because of that doesn't mean that the work hasn't gone into it and it's not a good strategy. So I'm not having a dig at organisational strategies, but what then conveys to the, particularly in big, massive organisations, it just doesn't tell a story. It just doesn't say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is going to be a really good place to work when we've done it. There's very rarely a burning platform either, reasons why we need to change. So for many people in the organisation, that's the responses that you'll get. That means that people aren't engaged with it. They're possibly just sitting back, carrying on as normal, not really interested in any of the changes coming, just imagining what life will be like when they've retired. They might see things in it that they start to panic about. This isn't going to be an organisation for me. I don't understand any of these things. I'm not going to fit in here anymore. I can hear somebody whistling. I'm not sure who that is, but it's fine. Or they might just start to panic. It might, there's the vortex, but people might start to panic, might start to leave in droves, lots of things. But essentially, you've not got an engaged audience, and it's your audience that you need to engage because they're going to be the ones delivering the strategy. There is some science behind this. I always bring it back to the neuroscience. We have evolved as human beings to dislike change. However much we as individuals say, I love change, we only love the change that we have some autonomy over, that's going to be good for us. If I ask you if you like climate change, nobody ever puts their hand up and says, yeah, I can't wait till the earth burns. We have evolved to not like change. It's a safety mechanism. The brain will default to running away from change, because if it doesn't know that it's going to definitely 100% be good for us, then it could be bad for us, and that could lead to death. And we all have that brain. However much we say we like change, a lot of change leaders say they love change, but guess what? The change they're leading probably isn't going to impact on them. They're doing it to other people. And even if it is going to impact on them, they've got all of the information and the data to tell them it's going to be a good change. Their brain has that data to say, this is safe. Going out and telling other people that this is a great project, this is a great piece of change, all of these benefits, is not telling the story. It's not giving the brain the data to say this is going to be good for me. So it's based on science. It's not because people are being difficult. It's based on the science. So how does it work? How does it know it's going to be bad? Oops. The brain, when presented with change, looks back. It doesn't look forward. So if somebody tells you this, we're going to digitally transform, the brain will scan the information it has on digital transformation. And it then fills in the gaps to predict the future. It can't predict a good future unless it already has data and knowledge and experience to say that digital transformation is a good future. Most people don't know what digital transformation means, but it sounds like as soon as you start saying things like AI, they can fill the gap saying this is going to take over my job. So they start to panic. It's not a good change. Even if it is a good change, the brain will still more often than not predict bad than good for you. So it's really hard sometimes, even if it's something you're choosing to do in life that will be good, like moving from the city to the country, your brain will still fill in gaps and start to create doubts. We all have doubts, even for good stuff. So imagine the doubts and the fear that goes with the unknown. So the brain can only predict the future based on the information and data it has. So if you aren't conveying the data in a way that helps fill in the picture in a good way, that's where everybody's brain's going. And that can be a panic or a, I'm just sticking my fingers in my ear and carrying on and pretending it's not happening. So that's about the organizational strategy. You wouldn't possibly, some of you are thinking, what has this got to do with me? I'm not involved in organizational strategy. They do it to me, or I'm involved in other ways, but I'm not part of the strategy. It's exactly the same as whatever you're trying to do. You will be trying to drive change somewhere in your life, whether it's a work project, whether it's your own business, whatever it is. Your project will be presented. You'll know it inside out. You'll know the good reasons for doing it. But guess what? Everyone else has got the fingers in their ears unless you told the story. They'll be filling in the gaps and thinking this could be bad for me. So it doesn't matter if it's strategy or if it's a small change you're leading. The story needs to be told in a way that the brain won't perceive it as being potentially dangerous. And people aren't running down the corridor scared and running away from your change, but this is what the subconscious is doing and telling them. So their behaviors, the way people talk, the way they respond will all be dictated by the brain that's already subconsciously made the decision that this could be dangerous and I need to be careful. And sometimes that means just ducking out and fingers in the ears. Sometimes that is panic. You probably won't see that on the outside. They possibly won't know that's how they're feeling and responding, but that's what's going on at a subconscious level and from a neurobiology level. So it doesn't matter if it's strategy or if it's just moving the stationery cupboard in the office. This will be what's going on. You probably worked out that moving that stationery cupboard is a really good thing to do and why. But unless you can tell that story, everyone else thinks it's a good idea, their brain will assume it's not necessary, or could, much more likely to assume it's not a good idea than a good idea. So what is the story? You need to tell the story of your change or your strategy, whatever it is. And the best way to do it is actually to live in the future. Don't say in 5 years' time, this is what we're going to be like. Use words like, can you imagine a workplace where we've got the ping pong tables and people come in at 10 in the morning and leave at 3 in the afternoon, and we have lunch times and nobody's stressed and we've got rid of the email thing? That's your day now. Don't tell it as something we're striving towards. Tell it as if we're already living it. Because when you do that, you're creating data for your brain. It doesn't matter if it's fake data. We all get inundated with fake data every day. But you're creating the story that you'll already lived this life. And if you've already lived this life, then when you present a change, the brain can fill in the gaps with the life, with that story. So it's creating a fake, it's not a fake future, it's the future you hope. But the more you tell it as a, we've already achieved this, the more your brain will fill in with the gaps. It says, okay, I've got experience of this and it felt really good. It's the feeling that goes with it. That felt really good when we were down to working 5-hour days. I love those days. So it becomes something in the past, something that already exists, and therefore your brain is filling that in as known data. So it's the same story, but tell it from as if you're already there rather than one day we will. So let's look at some examples. Anyone ever been to Provence? The lavender fields. Anyone ever been on holiday where you thought, I really want to live here? We're going to live here. We've all done that. We've had a perfect holiday somewhere. It's like one day, the retirement plan. Provence is full of the lavender fields. If you've not been, it's just the food, the smell. It's just beautiful. But we've all got those places where we think, I would love to be here one day. So imagine you've been to Provence or wherever it is. Think of your own place just now where you'd really love to move to if you could. You get home and it's just this for 4 weeks, torrential rain. And you think, let's do it. Let's go. We've always wanted to do it. Let's just do it. You put your house on the market, you start to look for houses. So this is something that you have some experience of and something that you've thought about doing for ages, and you enact it. How does it feel to be in that life, that dream life that you sometimes chat about one day, you know, when the kids are grown up, when we're retired, when we've got that new business set up? Think about your dream. How does it feel to be in that life? I'd love some feedback here from anyone. How does it feel on a day-to-day basis to be living that life that you dream about? Try and picture it.
I think it would feel empowering, like you'd feel like you'd achieved something.
Yeah. But can you imagine being in that life? Can you actually imagine what it will feel like day to day?
Energizing.
Energizing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine getting up in the morning and how your day's going to pan out and who your neighbours are going to be?
Yeah, I think I'm drinking too much wine, actually. I'm not sure it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what time's the pub
So-
opening? Oh, it's just down the road. Excellent.
So
We know what it smells like anyway.
you know what it smells like if it's Provence, yeah. So we start to fill in some of the gaps because we know some of those things. We know the smell, we know the wine, we've got some experience of it from being on holiday. It can still be really, really hard if we really think about it to imagine ourselves in that life, if that makes sense. So we can imagine bits of it and we can imagine it's going to be exciting and empowering, but we can't like feel what it actually feels like unless we've done it before. So that bit can be quite hard to do because you can't imagine a future unless you've got some experience of it already. So there'll be gaps. So we can imagine bits of it. We can imagine the sort of the house we might buy or live in because we've seen the French houses. We can imagine the croissants for breakfast, the coffee, the wine, the going to the markets, the buying the cheese and the pate. We've done bits of that. And what the brain will do with all of that, we've sold the house, it will put all those together and start to try and predict that future. There'll be gaps in that because unless we've done it before, we don't know what it's going to be like. There'll be gaps like, am I going to feel lonely? I'm going to leave all my pals behind. My French is okay for a holiday, but getting by day to day, being able to talk to the locals, get the builders in, that might be a real struggle, which will mean I'm even more isolated. And it might mean that I'm closing off avenues and doors because we're moving out of the country, we're selling the house, we might not be able to afford to come back again. The brain will start to fill in the gaps with some of that stuff. And this is the thing that you really want to do and is your dream. So imagine what it's like for something that isn't your dream. So it will start to fit, and these become the doubts, and we can list them, or we can choose to ignore them, or we can manage them in different ways. It depends on the level of them. But this is what your brain's doing for the good stuff. Imagine if Nexa says, okay, scrap that, we're not going to Provence, we're going to Mars. What does Elon's cracked it? Everyone's off to Mars next year. I'm going to have Christmas 2025 on Mars. How does that feel? What does life feel like on Mars?
Oh, that's definitely not a choice I'd make myself. Yeah, bleak. Yeah.
Constrained.
Yeah.
So we're doing all of that based on what we know about Mars. We haven't seen the other side of Mars yet. Could be like a whole rainforest. We don't know. We're filling it in with the data we have, and we're assuming it's going to be bleak. We've watched the films, we've seen the stuff. So we're filling it in, and we only have basic data. None of us have experience of living on a different planet. So we don't really know. But most people, unless you're like a real adventure explorer, astronaut type, would not want to be in that first trip to Mars. So the brain has filled in the gaps, and it has less data. It has no good data really, unless you really are an adventurer. So it's looking back, it's looking at what it knows, it's seen the films, it has a little bit of science data, it's assuming it's going to be bad. And you can't imagine what life will feel like. You can't imagine it because nobody can tell that story. We can only tell it based on the facts that we know. There's no story to go with it other than bleak. So when you get a strategy that says we're going to digitally transform, we're going to be more efficient, more productive, more innovative, agile, world class, a great place to work. What does it mean? It's the same as saying we're going to Mars. No one can live that future. And there'll be more detail in there, but you've probably missed the story. Why do we need to be more productive? We already work really hard. Why do we need to be more efficient? It's all about money savings and state and shareholders. There's no story, so I'm not going to engage in it. Why would I engage in that? Because it doesn't tell me, what does agile mean? What does innovative mean? And there will be more, and some strategies are much more. But if those are your front headline, your first page, if that's what people see, they've got the fingers in those or they're panicking. We're going to be the leaders in AI. Why do we want to do that? I'm just going to lose my job. So a lot of strategies don't engage because they're just telling the Mars story. They're not telling the trip to Provence.
I think as well, some of those, I mean, some of those buzzwords bring back memories. And things like agile, for example. Agile, I worked in a project organization, and agile meant that if somebody changed their mind, we would change the project accordingly. What they didn't see was the downside of doing that. Okay, that means your budgets are going to be all over the place, and you're going to have to accept it might cost you more. We can be agile. We can do anything with enough time and money. So straight away, I'm seeing, I'm actually going back to my memory and saying, I've seen this before.
So even if it's different, you've seen it before. Because they're all about saving something, time, money, the latest buzzwords, whether it's agile or AI, seen it before. So you're not engaged. You're just going to carry on as is or look for another job. But the people that need to drive the change are probably not engaged. And you do the bare minimum to meet what the criteria is. I had a KPI when I worked in the health service for the number of innovative ideas we had as an organization. Because I was head of innovation. It was green every month because I have about 15 ideas just in the shower. There was no concept of how good are they as an idea, how likely are we to implement this. No, there was no criteria. It was just how many ideas have we had. So I could fill it in on day one and it'd be green all month. So people will play the game, and this will be the same for your projects and change that you're trying to lead as well. They'll play the game if it's something like this. So think about the change you're trying to lead just now or projects you're involved in. How much of those benefits are like a list of things like this? Because you know the story. We can go to the market, we can buy the croissants, you know all of that. But how much are you telling that story as if those people are already there living in that future? When this project is implemented, it's going to feel like this. And the key is the feeling bit. Smelling the lavender, feeling the freedom, feeling the breeze, tasting the cheese and the pate at the market, because that's the story of why you're doing it. And that's the story that people want. So it doesn't matter if it's the big high-end stuff or your little bit about moving the stationery cabinet. Imagine being able to come in the office and not chip your ankle or your elbow on that cupboard because on that difficult corner. So imagine the pain that we won't suffer on a daily basis because we're no longer walking into the cupboard. That's what will sell your project to other people. So sell the story and sell it as if you're already living there. Don't be the Mars, be the move to Provence that everybody wants to do. And a lot of this work will have been done in those strategy meetings with all those people, and they can imagine it because they've told the story to each other, but they haven't translated it to the organization as a story. They've translated it into that list of things and the posters that go up and the values and all of that, none of which anyone pays any attention to. So make it the move to Provence that everyone wants to be and practice it on your own thing. There's another good example of somebody who did that. You might recognize some of these words. This created a huge movement in America. because people could hear what it felt like. And it's the feeling. It's the attachment to the feeling. Does anyone recognize any of this or know where it's from? This is the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream speech. If he just says we're all going to be free and running around, no one would have really listened. The whirlwinds of revolt, the fatigue of travel, the red hills of Georgia, the brotherhood, the racial injustice, the sweltering summer. He described how people felt. It's the emotion that goes with it, not just how they feel about the change, but how they physically felt. The mistrals coming in to keep us cool, the veranda, the waft of lavender coming up as we eat lunch. That's the stuff that people buy into, because the brain's taking all this as real data and connecting it all up and saying, yeah, this is a good thing. But telling me I need to be more efficient and you're going to implement an AI, not interested. So whatever it is you're trying to lead, and this works at home as well. If you're trying to change the family holiday, I live in North Scotland and I'm moving northwest, and everyone goes, what about the midges in the rain? But that's not my story. My story is I'm moving into a house that opens into a glen. There's a beautiful sea loch in front of us that's tidal. There's mountains, there's wildlife galore. There's a few neighbours around and a little village hall, but they're not close neighbours. I have uninterrupted views, and it's a dead-end single-track road, so there'll be no passing traffic. That's my story. I don't give, midges. There's solutions to midges. There's waterproof clothing for rain, but it's the story, but other people would just see midges. And so tell the story, and then everybody else, you don't want everyone else to move there because part of it is moving away from people, but it's the story, and it's the story you tell yourself. So it works at home. If you want to do the Northwest Scotland holiday with the kids rather than the all-inclusive in Spain, tell the story of how it's going to feel. We're going to get up and, we're going to get up every morning and open the tent doors, and the sun's going to be coming up. We'll do the fishing. Don't just do a list of facts, do the story, because people will attach the emotion to the story. And it's the emotion that makes your brain thinks it's a good thing. The story that you tell yourself, the story that you tell others is the emotion that goes with the feeling. And that feeling of change can be exciting or fearful. And the brain will assume fear unless it has good reason to think it's exciting. So you need to attach the story to make it exciting. So it's not just the house, it's we're going to wake up and it's going to be warm and there's going to be fresh croissants and we're going to pick tomatoes out of the garden that we've grown ourselves. And we're going to cycle to the market to pick up some cheese and pate and fresh bread for lunch, and perhaps we'll get a carafe of wine, and then we'll have 2 hours having a lazy lunch under the veranda, and the lavender the lavender smell will waft over us and the mistral will keep us cool. Whatever it is, tell the story, not just the facts, because that's what people will attach to and that's what they'll get excited about. And when you do that, you can get everybody on the same boat or train or bus heading towards wherever it is. You in your little room have worked out is a good place to be, but you haven't conveyed properly to others. So tell the story and other people will want to join you. I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to ask you for your stories and reflections and anything else from that little ninja move.
I've got almost like a negative one. We were in a really good place. We come up within our organization with a very efficient, friendly, effective project management approach. We called it alliancing, but basically you trusted people, you got on with them, we got everybody in a room, and our projects were coming in like 30% cheaper, 30% quicker on major capital building projects. And our organization got taken over by an American, and straight away the trust, it was like complete change. Let's go back to the traditional way. Trust is good, control is better. And that change destroyed the organization for a lot of people, because we'd been not in nirvana, but we'd been in a good place.
Yeah.
And nobody, and it was like, what are the good points? Where's your vision of where this place you're taking us to is better than where we are now?
Yeah.
So that was one. Second one I've got is, I too am thinking of moving, and I'm trying to, one of the problems we've got is, where do we move to? So I'm quite interested to know how you you say you have a dream of going to Provence.
Yeah.
I've got a dream of possibly going to about 5 different places, but I can't crack which one I want to go to.
So if you want to hang on, I'm happy to chat to you after this because there's some
Okay.
other tips, which I can share with you quickly. Because I've been through the massive change in the last few years myself, so I know they work. But yes, just stay on the call. We can chat through those.
Okay.
It's really interesting that you had a good culture and it was destroyed instantly. And that's the thing. It's so much harder to win that back, and it's so easy to destroy in an instant. You have to rebuild all of that trust. So that's why I talk about the neuroscience so much, is plan for giving people a good experience before. You might spend much more time preparing for those conversations than you do on delivering the change. Because if you do and you get everybody on board, your change is going to be really easy. It's much, much harder once you've created a level of distrust, a level of disengagement to win people back. Much, much harder. And people often get me in to do work and then they say, we're going through a reorg. We'll get you in after we've been through it. And that's the wrong time. Get me in before, because everyone will be ready for what it is you're going to do. Let's tell them the story of why you need to go through the reorganization and why it's going to be good for them and why they're not going to lose their jobs and all of that, because 9 times out of 10 in these reorgs, nobody does leave their jobs because some people leave and there's vacancies, but you've ruined their entire workforce and they've all got their feet up and they're either panicking or they've got the fingers in their ears, but they're not doing what you want them to do. So spend the time thinking about how will people respond to this and make sure it's brain friendly. But thanks for sharing, Peter. Anyone else got any stories or questions or anything they'd like to share?
So it's been very interesting for me because I do 3-dimensional virtual tours. So you can go into a place, you create a complete model, and then you can input information into that model. And it can change the way people work. So if it's construction, you can go and get work in progress. It's very good for showing finished projects. But the ability to store information in a place where it's relevant, or to be able to roll back time. So, they've closed walls and you can then see where all the services, lots of things like that. People get very, very excited about it, but they don't move on it. It's not expensive. When it's one-on-one, they really, really do engage, but then they've got to try and tell the story within the organization. And most of the materials I've realized from what you've said are using all the buzzwords, innovative and cost saving and all this, and it's not really getting people. So what I will have to do is try and say, well, imagine that you can't forget to take to an architect a certain measurement, because they all have to go back. There is always a measurement that they've forgotten. I'd have to go more down that kind of route. So
I work in a 3D world called Cube, and we have exactly the same issue of trying to sell that into organizations. Somebody really loves it and then they have to go back and tell that story, and it's really hard to imagine. We start with the pinch point. What is their problem that you will fix? So don't start with your solution, start with their problem. What is your challenges just now? What are the things that are really taking time, costing money, things that you really don't want to be dealing with? And you almost want to get them, there's a tool in the book called IDQB, which is on my website. You want to get them to say, we don't know how to fix this. What do you suggest? And then you go, ta-da, we've got this amazing thing that'd be really cost effective and da-da-da. But start with what their problem is and what their pinch points are and how your solution will fix them would be a suggestion.
When they actually engage with it, they actually go from, they literally, when the light goes on, they go from, we resist this. And in fact, the people that resist it end up being the people that find the most uses for it. And then the whole thing snowballs, and they're like, we use it for this and we use it for that. And amazing. But it's so hard to move a whole organization.
My other reflection on stuff like that is, you get some excitement, it would be great, but if we accept it, we're going to have to do something different. And a lot of people don't want
Yeah.
to do some, and it's
No.
not that they don't want the solution, but they don't want any more work. So you're dealing with quite fatigued brains a lot of the time, and it's easier to say no, even if it's a good thing for me. We've all done that. You know, this we don't go out on a night out because we're tired. It's easier to say no and stay in, when actually it probably would have been good for us to go out and do something different in a different environment with our friends. So the brains will say no a lot of the time, and if it's going to require more work, it's going to be more energy. Even if it's going to be a good thing, it's still easier for the brain to say, not this time. So it's easier to stay static. The brain prefers the status quo to change, even if the status quo is not good. Even if I have to do this thing and it takes me 2 hours a day and I'd love to have it automated, I'm going to choose that over an unknown where I know it might be automated, but it's going to require more work because I don't know what that thing is. So the brain subconsciously chooses the status quo often over a change where there's a bit of an unknown, because it doesn't know how much work it is and it's different.
Yeah.
And it knows, at least with the thing we've got, however bad that is, and this works for relationships and all sorts of things, it's a known. So it's certainly bad rather than uncertain and possibly good. So you
That's
have to
a
challenge
that's
your
a really
brain
good
on
way.
this quite a lot. Yeah.
I like that.
I mean, it's absolutely true. There'll be things in your life that you've not changed because even though the thing isn't good, but there's certainty over how bad it is. So your brain knows what to expect, even if it's not good. A change is different and it's uncertain, and you're not 100% certain it's going to be good. So
That's
you
good.
have to fight your brain on that.
So it would be good to ask them if they would prefer to accept the known bad in some way and make them realize they don't.
So yeah, but what you need to do is to get them to recognize that themselves. So coach them through that conversation. Imagine how the conversation might go and get them to say it, because you can't change other people. If you try and tell people the answer, they'll dig their feet in. If you can get them to realize that perhaps they're wrong, but they realizing it for themselves, not you telling them, they're much more likely.
They're not putting up a big fight. They're not at all. They're like, wow, this would be great. And what
So-
we do is so rubbish. But
Yeah. So what are your pinch points? What's the problems you've got? What are the challenges? What would you like to fix? If you could have an imaginary wonderful future, how would that be? And why haven't you done that yet? Because there's no solution. Well, guess what? This thing costs you £2.50. We'll do it in a day. You can have a go, blah, blah, blah. So get them to want your solution rather than you selling them solution. Like the Provence things, get people to think, yeah, let's move to Provence without you saying this is what I want for the family. Get them to say, Mum, can we move to Provence?
quickly, what's your cube thing?
Cube, it's Cube with a Q, Q-U-B-E. It's a sort of 4D immersive world where I learned lots of things from Eddie Obeng, who's behind all of the tools that I use. And it's just really, really good for alignment, collaboration. Christine has been on it. She's quite a lot, getting projects done really quickly. It's brain friendly. It does all the stuff that we talk about and that I talk about without telling people that's what you're doing. It just automatically makes everyone feel good because everyone's smiling on there as well. So it's a great place to do your work and save time and do all of those things in that strategy, like
Or was it
digital
like cube.com or
transformation.
something?
Cube.cc. Yeah.
Okay.
But with a cube with a Q.
Thank you.
So yeah, have a look. If you want to have a chat about it as well, just get in touch. Happy to give you a show around of it. Anyone else?
I think where I work, so we do a lot of sort of user-centered design. So we've got some of those stories, but I think we do quite good at telling the stories at a really small level, but somewhere along the journey, like up to the kind of more kind of senior management messages that kind of go out, those get lost in translation. So we're actually making really poor use of all of these really rich stories that we've got. We've got all of these, vast sort of user research that talks about those, the pain points that you talked about, and we can really connect those with, that vision and where we think this is going to take us, that future. But we have those conversations at to smaller level, and we need to, I think, I
Yeah.
guess, shout about them a bit more and put them
Yeah.
set stage. Yeah.
There's, and I say, a lot of that stuff is there. The story would have emerged in the strategy sessions, but it just gets diluted down to a list of KPIs or statistics or bullet points or that just mean nothing. So, and it's really hard to get seniors to take this on board and do stuff with it. I know it's a real challenge. So that's why I say you might not be able to influence the strategy, but you can influence your change. And Ninja's all about sort of, you know, share that and get other teams to do it, and it will grow. Thanks, Sarah. Great that you could come. And it's sort of spreading it from within, because the top-down approach very rarely works. But if you can spread it from within and get other people doing things and talking about, oh, we went to Helen's session, it was amazing, I can't wait till this change comes in, it starts to become infectious. So the Ninja bit is all about stealth moves, because you'll never get it done from the top unless somebody, you know, very ninja-like comes in and tries to shake it up. But that's a big challenge. So if it comes from within and it spreads, a bit like a virus, but in a good way, then you start to infect everyone with that, and it starts to become, a lot of people say we need to change the culture of our organizations. And my response to that is, you are the culture of your organization. No one's going to come and do it to you. If you want to change it, change it. Find a group, find a crowd, find three pals and just say, let's try it this way. Let's do something different. Read the Ninja books, or if you Be More Pirate books, if you've not come across them. But you are the culture. You might not be able to make big decisions on big budgets, but you can change how things are done day to day, because you're doing the doing. So you need to grab it and have a go yourself, and be prepared to fail and learn from it. If you get it wrong, learn from it and then move on and try something else. Again, the books will take you through this. And the books are based on my experience of getting it wrong. I failed a lot, but I learned from it and managed to get some, hopefully, funny tales to share with others. So if you want to know more, and again, Peter, let's stay on, get in touch if you want a one-to-one call. My calendar's open, please do. And I'd love to know your big learning points from today, or your biggest surprise. So I'm just going to go around the room very quickly. We've got 3 minutes. Try and stay on time. If anyone who's left. So, Christina, biggest learning point or surprise?
Actually, I think the whole statement of "you are the culture" is really good. I wrote that one down.
Brilliant. I might write that down too. Thank you, Christina.
Sorry, just making sure my mic was working. For me, not a shock, but good to know that we're on the same page, is that just how important communication is, because I am probably, like, I'm a senior person in the business who is trying to filter that strategy through. So it was just interesting to know that, you know, we're on the right track. We just need to keep doing more of what we're doing. So it's kind of more like a reconfirmation for me.
Brilliant. Have you got kids, Have you got kids?
I do, yes.
Try it out on the kids, because they'll tell you if it's bullshit.
Well, yeah, I've got a very honest side. So
if
yeah.
you can really tell us a good story, the kids will be like, "Oh, I want to work with you, Mum." So yeah, kids are a great audience to test all this out on. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Helen.
There's a couple of things that I wrote down. I definitely kind of the tell the story, not just the facts. I think I've been guilty very much of getting into that rhythm of thinking, well, no, if I just hone in on those facts there, you know, no one can argue with this. So yeah, actually bringing out that sort of softer, more human side of that story is one of my biggest takeaways, I think.
Brilliant. And just remember the emotion. People attach to the emotion of it. So get the emotions in there. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Peter.
I think the thing that struck me was the idea of this creating the vision. I've got a note that says, what is a day in the life in the new world? And actually thinking forward. It's very easy to step back and say, well, I can see the problems with this and this and this and this. Yeah. And then to take it back to the point about me thinking of downsizing and moving away, is you don't downsize and you don't move away, because I've got all my known knowns here.
Yeah.
So that's quite. I mean, how I do it's another matter, but yes. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Once you can live the future, you can work backwards to how to get there, and that gives you the place to start. So your
Yeah.
place to start probably isn't thinking about where to move to, but I'll talk to you about that after. And if anyone wants to stay on, I'm happy to stay on. But I'm conscious of the time for folk that need to get off. And Tony. Oh, you're on mute, Tony.
So sorry. I like your change is dangerous. And then your comment about the known bad. I know I can use that somehow. So, you know, I know change is dangerous. You prefer to live in the known bad. Yeah, I can use that in some twisted way because they already know that that's not an answer.
Yeah. But it's shifting it. And remember, the brain does this subconsciously. So that's the challenge. You've already, and so to change, you have to challenge your own thinking. And that's really hard to do. It's really hard to have a conversation with your brain.
They already know that it's not optimal what they're doing. So, I mean, to me, I think I can actually say that. I really do think I could say that.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. So thank you for coming. Everyone's dropped because of time. Hopes and fears. We had no fears. Hopes. Are we inspired? Feel a bit unstuck? Was it relatable?
Very much. Thank
You
you.
you achieved your agenda. Well done. Brilliant. So next time is Beyond the Ninja, looking at change moves from a new perspective. I can't remember the date, but no one remembers anything like after Christmas from before Christmas. So we'll send out stuff. I think it's the second week back after the new year. But yeah, everything, it just brain melts, doesn't it, between Christmas and New Year? So we have to start again. I'm going to switch off the recording and then